And you still are.
I was lucky that way. My husband and I were talking about it at dinner. We were talking about karma. And we have this debate over whether karma is real or not. And we both feel karma is real. But we wonder how real, right? Like how often your karma plays out and whether your lifetimes end up being difficult for a reason, right? So I mean, not to segue quickly, but I got Blade Runner because I had a certain look. And I was able to keep up with, talent-wise, what was asked of me. So I was flexible, and I'd come from Interlochen Arts Academy where I danced. Yeah, woo, we have Interlochen here. You know, but it was 19 years of age. I was actually in LA making Blade Runner when I was 20, and I'm 64 now.
Oh!
You know, yeah, and I still love to do my tap dancing and my yoga, and you know, but it's just a lot better now not being under the pressure that my early career presented, but also the excitement. So it's all karma, I think. You have to. Well, here's the conversation we had at dinner, my husband and I. Okay, he said it's the circumstances you're born in, the environment you're in, and the choices you make. And I was like, yeah, right on, that's it, right? That's our life, right? The choices we make, where we find ourselves. And in 1980, I found myself being hired for this movie, 20, thinking, oh my God, this is gonna seem kind of strange, but when my agent called me, it was a Friday night, and I remember he called me and said, you got it, and I was 19, and I was like, oh, great, and then I put the phone down, and I was like, it must have been a little bit like the Emancipation Proclamation when the blacks realized they were free. They like go, oh my God, now I have to go and make my own living, right? I can't like live anywhere else except I have to show up. I have to be there. I have to be my own representative, right? It was probably a weird comparison, but when you have to show up and be talented as people are expecting you to be, it's scary, especially at 19. When you get your freedom, it's like you gotta show up, you know, gotta be there. It's very easy to hide in life. I mean, in a way, you know, but when you have to show up, and that's what 19 was like for me. And this movie was quite the experience for me. I had no experience prior to this movie. Maybe, no, I had Stripes, but it was huge to me at 19.
Yeah, and it really is astonishing to look back and remember how young you were when you took on that role.
People forget that.
But it's because the performance is so impressive and sort of lived in and worldly. You know, you're one of the main reasons I love this film. So thank you again for coming. Since you brought up your experience of working on the film, I'm reminded of one of my favorite things to show up on the internet in the past few years, which is the Polaroids that you shared, that you took on the set.
It was the first selfie.
Yeah.
It's kind of true. Well, no, there's 2019-20s when photography first started, I mean, obviously.
I bring this up because they're so charming and candid, and you look like you're having so much fun in those photos, and so does everyone else, which I love to see because it seems to run counter to, you know, what has been documented about this movie because it was so ambitious and, you know,
well, the seriousness of the
material is dark, and it was, by all accounts, kind of a difficult film to make. But was your experience, you know, a more fun atmosphere on the set, or?
Those days, that film was made in 1980. It got released in 1982. Those were the days when it was still film, and it was, you know, the baby boomers were in control of that industry. Now, you know, since then, video, blah, 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 all these other things have rolled out. But in 1980, it was film. and you had to shoot it, and you had to, you know, there was a lot of technicality about it, and then you had to roll it, and then you had to develop it, and then you had to have dailies, and then, you know, we weren't emailing each other the clips. You know, it was much more, a lot more trouble, a lot more work to make movies back then. And there was a tighter control on movie making because of the skill involved. Skill is a factor in industries that require high skill. And at that time, the movie industry needed high skill because it had, you know, film that needed to be processed and blah, blah, blah. Now everybody's taking pictures of their food and posting it on Facebook, and we're all photographers now. It was a little different back in 1980, and 1970 and 1960, and, you know, you go back all the way to the beginning of film, 1920. It's actually 1917. It's actually technically 1909 when Nickelodeon was invented by Edison. So it's a long journey. Okay, period.
Excellent, thank you. And I do encourage anyone who hasn't seen these Polaroids to check them out. They're very, very cute. So my next question is specific to sort of this decades-long debate that's centered around this movie. Those of you in the audience probably know what I'm talking about, which is to say, is Harrison's character, Rick Deckard, a replicant or a human being? I know where I stand on that. We know where Sir Ridley stands on it, and where Harrison stands on it.
What does Ridley say on that?
Oh, he absolutely thinks he's a replicant. Now, I'm with you on that one. Now, I'm not going to ask you what your opinion on that is.
Okay, here's two hints. Remember at the end of this movie, there's that, well, not quite the end, but there's that unicorn? Mm-hmm. Okay, and then Ridley went on to do that movie called Legends with Tom Cruise, which had the unicorn. Mm-hmm. Okay, he was implanting his next movie into the next thing. Because he's a planner. He is. Ridley is a planner. He's got an active mind and he processes quickly, and he's a planner and very creative. So Legends came after that. So that's my proof that, well, you said he thought he was a replicant.
That's what Ridley says.
Yes,
I think
okay.
he's a human.
Sorry. I demurred. That's exactly right. Ridley thought he was a replicant. And then what happened was, all right, so my crazy eye looked, sorry. He did think Ridley was a replicant. However, Bob and Alan Ladd and the producers and everybody said, you can't have a leading man not be human. And they basically didn't like the idea that, you know, the leading guy wasn't human. So they chopped him, as happens.
What I'd be curious to hear about from you is how much of that sort of enigma was being discussed while making the movie, and if so, did that affect how you played your scenes opposite Harrison? Are you looking at it as a human man or as a synthetic being like yourself?
The funny thing about being an actress at age 20 and being as cute as I was back then, you are treated a certain way. But I was a little bit defiant in the sense that I did not see myself as a young, beautiful actress. I was always a tomboy as a kid. And again, they didn't have surgery back then, because I'm glad I'm a woman. But I mean, back in the day, I definitely felt like a guy. And I definitely felt like a tomboy. And when I was on any set at all times, I was always looking for where the goods were. And the goods, in my opinion, were the camera. I watched every single cinematographer like a hawk. A lot of actresses are very much like, look at me in my mirror and let me see, am I good and everything? And they're a little bit in a bubble. That was not me. I was always more the tomboy, and I wanted to be on the set. I heard Carol Lombard was like that. I wasn't there. I don't know. but I heard she was always like that, and I heard Lucille Ball was like that too. And that's the only two people I ever heard that were a little bit like me from working over the years. And people say, you know, I worked with her, and you remind me of her. You know, like that's how it rolls out. So I forget the question.
Oh, just did this sort of lingering question affect how you played your scenes with Harrison? Are you, when you're looking at him, are you seeing, here's this kind of washed up, pathetic human man with all of these, failings, or are you seeing, oh, he's like me, he was created in a lab, and we were
Well, Harrison had been in the business quite a while, and what I was really grateful. Stand up. I'll give you an example.
Oh boy.
No. We'd be here. This is what he would do to me a lot of times. He'd move me around. Camera would be here, and I actually thank Harrison for this now, because he knew I didn't know anything. He'd be like, I'm not kidding. And at that time, I was a little bit like, what? But he knew. I could give you a thing he did that was really sweet. You know the first shot in the movie where I'm walking? It's the iconic shot in the movie, and then I like move into the shot. Well, it's my first movie. I don't know what the hell to do. And every time, 25 takes later, whatever, I'm walking up, and I look down because I gotta stop somewhere, right? Like, how do I know where to stop? So I go, stop looking down. I'm like, well, I'm walking 25 feet. How am I supposed to know how to stop? So Harry, very sweet, he says, well, why don't we put a sandbag right here? Because I'm a dancer, at least I can, if I'm walking up, I'm walking, oh, okay, there's a sandbag, right? And Harrison was intuitive. He knew I was a dancer. If my feet can feel where I am, I know where I am, and then I didn't look down. That's just a sweet thing to do for another actor, right? Especially a beginner, right? I mean, I thought it was pretty sweet, He'd be a bitch other times, but it was definitely nice to do that.
And that is really one of the most iconic shots in all the
It's
movies.
the shot of the whole movie in terms of my career. That was like the iconic shot of the picture. And then in 2049, did anybody here see 2049?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so this is a lovely story. My youngest son, Quinn Lujan, he got hired on the show, and because I said, can you give my son a job? And they said, okay. And then the UPM called me up and he said, well, what department do you want him in? And I said, well, I get to choose, put him in the camera department with William Deakins, like what, I said, but ask Quinn. So he calls Quinn. Quinn says, visual effects. So he goes, works in the visual effects. Does really well, and that's what my son, Quinn, has been doing ever since. He worked on Dune 1, Gemini Man, Black Adam, Dune 2. Like, that's what my son, who's 25 years old, does now. He works in the visual effects department. So I said, Ridley, all is forgiven. It's all good, because, he's got an industry that he's been able to walk into. But I said to Quinn, why did I not know you were going to go into visual effects? And he said, they don't have a union. And I was stunned. I said, how? He said, I go into the camera department, they leave me on the curb. I said, oh my God, you're so smart. I was in shock because the visual effects industry is not unionized yet. So he could go in, and I thought, oh my God, I raised a smart kid. I was like, at least he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, that's such a lovely kind of full circle moment there. And for those of you who may not know the visual effects for Blade Runner 2049, won an Academy Award.
Yeah, with John Nelson. Yeah. Well, how I got off subject was that they actually ended up putting that iconic shot from the original Blade Runner in 2049.
Yeah. At this point, I would like to open it up to the audience if you have any questions. Yes, you in front.
I was wondering in Dr. Howard's soliloquy before he died, was that improvised?
It might have been. I don't know. I wasn't there, but definitely Rutger was a free spirit. You know, so it seems likely. And I remember hearing that he was in huddles with Ridley. You know, but it was a sort of rainy night that night, right? I'm sure Rutger is an improviser, but I don't know. He's been dead a while. How long has he been dead? Like 4 years? I miss him. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, he
was a free spirit, so it seems likely.
If you read his autobiography, he does take
Did you read it?
Oh, yes.
What was the best part of it for you?
Well, the Blade Runner chapter, obviously.
And why?
Just because his perspective on it is, I've read so many different things about this movie and all that, and his sort of how he portrayed Roy and what he brought to that is so interesting and unique. And I think you and Rutger have the two kind of meatiest roles in the movie. They're very complex characters.
Rutger was very down to earth, like myself. So it was fun. He was a fun guy to work with.
All right, let's get another. You, sir, in the back. Raise your hand first. Yes.
Question I wanted to ask. The main thing that changed the final cut, as we call it now, is that the background narration, the more Sam Spade kind of overdubbing in parts of the film. Some people didn't like that, they cut it out, and they modified the film to adapt into the next one. And I like the narration myself, and I'm just wondering how you feel about taking that out and leaving it.
I like the narration from the beginning, but I can't tell if it's just because it was the first time I saw the film. The beef was Harry didn't like narration, and he felt like if you have to narrate the film, it's not a good film, basically. And here's what's funny, though. It kind of backfired on him because, you know, of course, they made him do the narration, you know, in the first version, and he tried to give as flat of a performance as he could. You know, like, and you listen to the narration, and you think, oh, this guy needs to get laid. Jesus Christ. Right? You know, it's very flat, and it's very kind of, and yet that was perfect, wasn't it? I mean, in a way, it was kind of perfect, so it sort of backfired on him. But Harry did not want to narrate it. His rule of thumb was that if you have to narrate a show, it's not doing its job. But I think he was wrong about that, personally.
Do we have time for two more?
Sure.
Okay. Yes, you and then you. Oh, no, let's spread it out a little bit. How about you in the back there, on the side?
The Goyle.
Yeah.
So I'm told that I actually haven't seen the original release. I've only seen the director's cut. But I'm told that in the original release, you kind of fly off in the end with Harrison Ford. And I'm wondering, in the same vein as the narration, which do you like more? Do you like the ending with the door closing, or riding into the sunset?
I think it's a better movie with the door closing, but I still like me flying off better. You know what I mean? Like, I could see why Ridley made the decision he did, but the thing is, once you let the cat out of the bag, it's out. You know, so that was the first impression. It's like, what's the movie Steven Spielberg, AI? Okay, remember the robot kid? And they wasn't it Osment? Yeah, so she's imprinting him. She's like going and saying, okay, hello, you know, the whole imprinting process, right, of the little AI guy. that's what audiences experience when they see a movie for the first time. In fact, honestly, I think that's what the culture experiences. I can remember my mother loving the movie His Girl Friday. And my mother was like a baby of the Depression, right? She just loved His Girl Friday because she saw herself as like, Rosalind Russell and a, journalist and everything. And my sister liked Ryan's daughter, and I loved Singing in the Rain. That was the movie that kind of imprinted me. So I think we're all very vulnerable to being imprinted. And I think when Blade Runner first came out, that flying scene imprinted people. And I think the door in the final version is kind of like, fuck you, I don't know. I don't like it as much, right? I like them flying off together personally. So that's the long answer.
It's fascinating that you put it in those terms, too, because if you think about it, Rachel is kind of a printed character.
Yeah.
Her memories are not her own, she's manufactured to a certain degree.
I personally think that's true of the human race currently. I think we're all propagandized and we're all being imprinted, and I don't know, up here you guys know about UFOs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we're all trying to, remember how certain communities say there's an alien group called the Watchers, right? You've heard that, right? Okay. I have come up with this theory that they're not the Watchers. We're the Watchers. We're all watching TV. We're all watching, right? And it's a weird occupation. Like, it's a really weird activity. We sit and we watch. That's weird. I mean, in terms of like, instead of going out kayaking or, taking a hike or petting your dog or whatever, if you're sitting and watching, we're the watchers. That's my new theory.
I love it. So, you said you'd like to envision a happy ending for Deckard and Rachel. I don't know if you get the same impression that I do from this final cut. Like you said, the door closing, it's, as you put it, like a fuck you. But also, it almost kind of reminds me of the Mike Nichols from The Graduate, where you have this couple and you're kind of left wondering, what is the future for these two people?
The Graduate was an interesting segue.
And on that note, let's take
What's
other
it?
audience questions.
No, I mean, one other movie that stops abruptly like that. I mean, most people out in Hollywood are going, okay, what's the ending? Because the ending now is like kind of the driver of a film. And we're not in 1900, we're in like 2024, and there's all these people out there trying to make their movies, and, they're all going, oh, what's the ending? Because the ending's rather significant.
Certainly. All right, let's take one more really, really good question. Yes.
So I don't know if this is allowed, but I drew you a picture of an owl.
Oh, just put it on the end of the stage there. Perfect.
Also, I did my first tap recital at 37 years old at 10 in the morning, and I didn't know you,
Oh, I'm a tap dancer. Oh, that's good, girl. That's grand. Give this guy his question.
All right, let's hear it.
Yeah, so my question is, I'm a big fan of what you did in Dune, and I was curious if you have any thoughts about the difference between working with Ridley and working with Mr. Lynch.
That's a great question.
Or Oliver Stone.
Well, Ridley's much more of a control freak. You have to remember when David started, he was a painter. And how, as he told me, how he started was he got a Super 8, and he was going to paint, film, film. And then the film somehow it didn't develop correctly because he didn't do it correctly. And then he went back to the drawing board. And as you probably can guess, some painters are a bit obsessive. You have to be that kind of an artist. And David was like that. Is really an artist. first. So when he did Eraserhead, and then was The Elephant Man, and then he had a lot of success. And when he kind of rose to this high budget of Dune and Dino De Laurentiis and everything, it was his like crash and burn moment, really, you know. Whereas, so David's a little more human in a sense than Ridley. Ridley's really talented, obviously, you know, super talented, but his brain is like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, like the Judgment Day or whatever that I'll be back. You know, what Ridley is compulsive, you know. He's very compulsive. He's very like, so, I mean, how you get a great movie, I mean, they're very different. And I actually loved working with both of them. Not necessarily because of them, because it's always great to be young and making a lot of money and being successful, you know, that's always a sweet experience, right? But being in the, you know, being in the game. But I would say David was a lot easier to be around, you know, just on a human sort of yuck kind of level. He's a little bit sweeter.
Was it interesting for you to have your son working on the new Dune films? Since
You have no idea how relieved I was that happened. Because I knew once Quinn, my younger son's 25, my older son's going to turn 30 at the end of this year, and I told you I'm going to be a grandmother in July. So I'm excited. I am. I'm very excited. But we're all doing our prayers and meditation. We all want everything to work out really well. And what was I talking about?
Him working on the new Dune, and you
so
originated the role of Charlie.
Quinn, my younger son's a lot more like me in that I knew I didn't have that many lanes. Like, I knew I was pretty when I was young, obviously, and I knew that I wasn't going to be a brain surgeon or anything like that. I knew I didn't want to go to college because I couldn't do the grades, and, you know, like, I was able to recognize that, and I think Quinn was able to recognize that about himself and go, okay. And he saw that he had a lane to do visual arts, and he's stuck. You know, and I love that about him because it was just really, really fabulous. And my older son, who I would say is probably the smartest person in our family of four, he's just super bright and smart. He's just smart. And he graduated with a finance degree and this and that and all this other stuff. And now what Rio does is he teaches chess to kids in Manhattan. And his little clientele has expanded because, you know, wealthy people want to try to get their kids to think ahead, and that's what chess teaches you. And he loves it, right? He loves it. So it's a very different lane than maybe he thought he was going to go in, but he's loving it, and he's good with kids, and he's a sweetie pie. Both my sons are handsome and sweet and smart, and they love their mother.
As well they should. And it sounds like, you know, he would fit right in the world of Blade Runner. He could probably even beat Tyrell at
Everyone
chess.
loves him. Oh my God, he's a very sociable guy, and everyone loves him. And everyone loves Rio too. And when people meet my husband, they love him too. And in general, me too. I mean, you know. Oh, you guys were so sweet to come out. Oh, okay.
Let's give it up. Come on, yeah.